All right, and I am live. Good evening, everyone. This is Sean Brown. I'm also known as the Urban Disruptor. I'm the host of Urban Disruptors Weekly Wrap Up, which comes on Sunday mornings, usually live at 10 a.m., 10 to 11 a.m., where I talk about news and politics with a Camden, New Jersey focus, which is where my hometown is. Whether you're watching this on Facebook or YouTube, thank you for tuning in this evening. If you're watching this on a rebroadcast, thanks for taking time to find it and hit the play button. I appreciate your time and your attention. If you're watching this, I am going to right now add the link to anyone that wants to join this conversation live with me this evening. Um, I'm probably going to have to know you already and know you're going to have something good to say to add you on. So don't be offended if you don't get on. Or I don't know, maybe you should be offended. But nonetheless, thank you so much for tuning in. We're going to get into it in a few minutes. Please share this. If you saw One Night in Miami already, I'm going to do that's great and join the conversation. If you didn't, I'm going to do my best to not spoil it, although it is based off of history. So whatever I say, which is going to, for the most part, be things that happened. Um, so please share this video. We're going to talk for the first half hour about One Night in Miami and how that's related to Black Power with the different characters and how they express their Black Power in different ways. And I'll also bring that into what that means for us in the modern era. Hello, hello. Thank you for tuning in. Um, if you're watching this on YouTube, I'm not able to share the link to get on the StreamYard, but I guess if you know me, just text me and I'll send it to you. Or get the link off the Facebook, off Facebook. Anyway, so for the first half hour, we're going to talk about One Night in Miami and how that relates to Black Power in a modern era, lessons that we can learn in our own lives and our activism, in our families, and the way we look at politics, the way we look at white supremacy. And in the second half hour, I will talk about an issue that has been popular on social media and in the news related to the Camden School District inevitably closing a few schools. And I want to get into that in detail and do my best to share my perspective on it. So please share the video, start a watch party, let your friends and family know that we're about to have this fantastic, excellent education. Hope that you're healthy. Hope that you're happy, um, and all that. Let me start this right now with a screen share. I will be doing screen shares throughout this event, this discussion this evening, but I wanted to just first, on behalf of WCMD Media, which is one of the platforms of which you may be watching this tonight, and the entire Dare Academy family, I want to give my condolences to the family of G Money Payroll, whose given born name is George Brown Sr. So to his son, to his wife, his mother, his entire family, and all the hip hop artists, producers, engineers, vendors that he has supported over the years. It's sad to see G Money go. I enjoyed working with him. He gave good feedback, had good ideas. So you can see the details of his service here on the screen. And check out WCMB Media for more information about that. Okay. Next, One Night in Miami. So this is a movie right now that is on Amazon Prime. So if you have an Amazon Prime account, or if you're able to get somebody's password and you haven't seen the movie yet, I highly recommend it. The movie was directed by the great Regina King, who has been in many fantastic TV shows and movies for a long time, a very talented person. And this is her directorial debut, the first movie she has directed, and she did a great job. The movie is actually based off of a play with basically the same concept. So the movie and what actually happened in real life, Muhammad Ali, who at the time was Cassius Clay, was boxing in a match, beat Sonny Liston unexpectedly, and became the heavyweight champion. At the same time, he was also considering converting to Islam at the recommendation of Malcolm X. The night of the fight, Malcolm X, who was at the fight, convinced Cassius Clay to come to his hotel room, and Sam Cooke, the fantastic soul / R&B singer, and Jim Brown, no relation to me, the football player, joined them in the hotel room. And we don't know exactly what that conversation was in real life, but what we do know is that the very next day, Cassius Clay announced that he was converting to Islam, which is a big deal for a Black man to say that he was converting to Islam at this time when most people connected Islam to the Nation of Islam, which of course is what Mr. Ali eventually joined. Hey, Evan. Thanks for watching and writing a note. So I highly recommend you watch the movie. Most of the movie is dialogue between these four men. There's also a documentary on Netflix about Sam Cooke and how he died. So but there's also a documentary about Malcolm X, who killed Malcolm X. Great documentaries. Obviously, Muhammad Ali has documentaries as well. Never seen one about Jim Brown, but I'm guessing he has one too. So yeah, so this situation really happened. You have these powerhouses in a room, these big personalities who are doing amazing things, who are very talented. And the conversation, for the most part, was centered around the idea of what is the Black man in power with talents, responsibility to do for his own people, and how does he use that talent? How does he use that power to fight white supremacy and get the foot off their neck? What is a way to do that? How do you physically fight? Do you do it with nonviolence? What is the strategy? What is your part in what it is and what it is exactly that is going on? If you have any thoughts on this, feel free to share. I'm gonna share a little bit about each character and each person and what I think about how they connected in the movie. So first, Malcolm X. Now, Malcolm X. One of the reasons I saw the movie so quickly is because I had several people tell me that me and the actor that plays Malcolm X, that we look alike. Although I do see the similarities, I think it might be a bit of an exaggeration. But what I do think I do have in common with Malcolm X is to see how he was torn in terms of ethics of what he should do. He was raised and learned a very strict moral compass of the difference between right and wrong. He followed Islam in the Holy Quran to the best of his ability. And when he found out that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad had babies with young women and had scrupulous what he considered to be scrupulous business practices, he researched it. He talked to some of the women. He confronted the Honorable Elijah Muhammad on it. And at the point this movie is taken, they're actually in the it's not a spoiler, but they're in the minister are in the middle of their breakup, and he's dealing with that emotionally. And I can see the toll that his relationships with people that he is close to and has issues with, what that takes on him. And I also see the toll that it takes on his relationship with his wife and his children, and that the work brings him out of the house, and he has tension between being a good father and a good husband and being a good minister and a good spokesperson, either for the nation or for whatever the cause that he may have. Jim Brown, who I don't know, of all these people I know the least about, what I liked about him is that he did not want to just be reduced to an athlete. He wanted to be considered more than that. And he ended up switching careers the next year to a actor, which he references in the movie. Sam Cooke. So I learned a lot about Sam Cooke from the documentary I watched about him a few years ago. Actually, my friend Paul, God bless your soul, recommended that I watch the movie. I think it's called Who Killed, I should put this in my notes. I think it's called Who Killed Sam Cooke, or the two killings of Sam Cooke. It's something like that. I should look that up. I'll share it in the comments momentarily. Excellent documentary. Learn a lot about Sam Cooke, and a lot of that is really confirmed and shown in the movie as well. But There's a part in the movie, hopefully this isn't too much of a spoiler. There's a part in the movie where the song Blowing in the Wind is played. I'll just put it like that. It's a song by Bob Dylan. How many roads must a man walk down before you call him a man? There's that song. And Bob Dylan was a folk writer and poet from the Midwest, and that song was a hit. And in it, Sam Cooke is challenged to not just sing about love and relationships, but also sing about the civil rights movement and the issues that Black people face because of Jim Crow and white supremacy to begin with. Muhammad Ali, the last of the four that I'm talking about, one of the things that's just, I think, really compelling about seeing how Cassius Clay at that time carried himself was that he was 22 years old, 22-year-old heavyweight champion. And the fact that he was going through this spiritual journey to live the life that he truly wanted to live, that he was willing to push himself away from the temptations of women and drugs and drinking on a regular basis, and instead devote his life to being a good follower of the Holy Quran. If you look into it, he eventually broke away, but just the fact that a 22-year-old is attempting to go through that journey is something that I really admire about Muhammad Ali, and also the way that he was so willing to brag and talk positive about himself in a way that was funny, but also showed his confidence at a time where our people were expected to keep our head down low and speak with a low voice and not look at certain folks in the eye and be humble. He said, "I'm not going to be humble. I'm going to show y'all that I'm the greatest." And I love that bravado and the way he was charismatic with it. And I also think that all the actors in this movie, I think, did a really good job of playing the characters. I think Malcolm X and Muhammad Ali in particular have a certain way of speaking. So if you can get the voice down, that's good. But it's also the mannerisms, the emotion. And I think when you see the movie, we can see those things. So what do any of you think? Does anybody here have any questions they want to ask? Any confirmations that they want to make about what's going on? What was your thoughts? Have you seen the movie yet? Let me know. Let me see. Let me open. I don't actually open Facebook when I do this, so let's see how you guys are reacting. If you're tuning in, my name is Sean Brown. I'm the Urban Disruptor, host of Urban Disruptors Weekly Wrap Up on WCMD Media. I want to thank you for tuning in this evening. Right now, I am in the middle of talking about One Night in Miami, a movie on Amazon Prime that came out a few weeks ago that features a story about Malcolm X, Jim Brown, Muhammad Ali, and Sam Cooke, and a night that they spent in deep dialogue about their power and their power and influence, and lessons that we can learn right here in our community about that as well. Right now, I'm just going to go and tune into the show so I can see what it looks like myself. And if you guys have any questions or comments about what is going on, please let me know. Please share this video so other people can see it as well as we finish this conversation, this half of the first part of the conversation about Black Power and how it relates to the movie. And before we start the next part of the conversation about school closures in Camden. All right, so Black Power. So how does this deal with Black Power? A few things. The first thing I want to say about Black Power is if you hear the term Black Power, it should not scare you. It should not offend you. Black Power simply means this. It's an analogy. Think of it as this. Think of Black people, because of the chains of slavery, being a bunch of fish in the ocean. And we're trying to get away from the shark. A bunch of fish trying to get away from the shark. The group of fish who are tired of getting eaten, tired of being attacked, tired of having to run for their lives. And that small group of fish decide to organize themselves and say fish power. The shark shouldn't be offended and say, why can't I say shark power when you're the shark? You're the one that's on the attack. You're the predator. You're the one that people are running away from. You're the one that's trying to kill them. So when we say Black Power is two words that are supposed to remind us of the level of influence we should have in our own lives and how we should tell our own story and how we should be leaders in our own community, and we should spend money in our community so that dollar circulates in our community to build generational wealth. There's no successful or wealthy person who would disagree with this concept at all. But somehow when people hear terms like Black Power, they feel that someone is trying to take something away from them and give it to someone else that doesn't deserve it, when actually people are only trying to claim what is already theirs. And that includes our rights, which are not given to us by our government, but things that we are inherently born with simply as human beings. There are rights that we have. This is what our founding fathers wrote and taught. This is what's embedded in our Constitution. And when we exercise our Black Power, we're claiming what was supposed to be given to us in 1865 during Reconstruction. But after the assassination of Abraham Lincoln, the promises that were made were broken by the new president and the new military, which didn't allow us to get our 40 acres and a mule, which didn't allow us to be able to have the bank accounts that we had set up anymore, which didn't allow us to run for office in South Carolina and Georgia and North Carolina, Mississippi, Alabama, and other southern states. And this is a legacy that has followed us from generation to generation. So in one night in Miami, what we see, let me just check my notes. And one night in Miami, what we see, and again, I'm going to try not to give any spoilers, is how people use their power. How does Sam Cooke use his voice, his ability to entertain, the fact that he's on television, in a way to lift his people up, to expose Jim Crow at that time? Jim Brown is on the football field. So how does he use those press conferences, the commercials that he's doing, the movies, the money that he makes in a way to lift his people? Who is he donating his money to? What causes does he support? What journalists is he giving interviews to? And Malcolm X, how do you move forward in a way that uplifts your people without showing division amongst us as you split from the man that you quoted the most, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad? And Muhammad Ali very quickly shows what he does. He converts. And if you know his story, you know later he refuses the military draft, where they took his ability to fight away. These are people that made sacrifices, whose whole lives were transfixed on the idea of not only what benefits himself, but what benefits his people. The most talented at that time were leaders and movements attaching themselves to civil rights icons. A great relationship. Now, how are we doing this in this modern era right now? Ask yourself, when is the last time that you donated money to a social cause? Who are the activists that you support? You share their information that they post on social media. You send them a text or give them a call or send them a message letting them know that you are grateful for their contributions to our community. And then how do we use our relationships with government, our elected officials, to hold them accountable to the promises they made when they ran? To use their very specific power in a way that uplifts people and not just benefits those that may be in political circles or already in government. How do we hold our own people, our own Black and brown and Hispanic people accountable for being leaders in our community the way, as you'll see, Malcolm X held the other people in the room accountable? And who do we have around us, as Malcolm X did, that can give us a shoulder to cry on, that can tell us about ourselves in a way that we can hear it, feel safety in the conversation, and learn from it, grow, and move on without being offended? But seeing that in that we all have flaws, all make mistakes, the more public our lives are, the more scrutiny we open ourselves up to. It becomes a part of the duty of service. If anybody has any, if anyone has any comments about the movie, The Impact of Black Power, feel free to call in. You can use the link if you're on Facebook, or you can write a comment and I can go over it. Thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Sean Brown, and I am the Urban Disruptor and the host of Urban Disruptor's weekly wrap up on WCMD Media, which shows on Sunday mornings at 10 a.m., which you can always watch the rebroadcast right on Facebook or on YouTube. Hopefully you're watching on one of those platforms. Pretty soon on WCMD Media, you'll be able to watch everything right on the website. We're working on that now. All right. So I highly recommend everybody see it, see the movie. Let me show y'all a few things real quick. I would like for the audience to interact with me on this. So if there's any, all right, here we go. So if there's anything you want to share or ask, please let me know. We will, if you're waiting to hear the discussion on the schools, that conversation will start sharply at 8:30. All right, here we go. Okay. So there you see the actors. This is the guy playing Jim Brown, Malcolm X. I like those glasses. Sam Cooke and Muhammad Ali. There they are. And then there's the real Malcolm X. I'm 38 years old. The real Malcolm X died at 39 years old. 39 years old, a year older than me. And there's Sam Cooke singing in deep dialogue. Director Regina King. Anybody have a favorite Regina King part or story? Now let me show y'all. There is a photo from that night, a real photo of Malcolm X and Muhammad Ali. That was taken that same night, and that is right here. So this is that night. They went out for a little bit, and there you see the good minister with the great boxer. He carried this. This was a gift from the camera was a gift from his children, and he liked to go around taking pictures. And when I saw that, it kind of reminded me of me, and that I too have been like, I've been in front of the camera a lot. I like to let me be behind the camera and capture some stuff. There you see Muhammad Ali and Malcolm X these are Malcolm X's children here. So their relationship was, their relationship was mutually beneficial. In that, and when I say their relationship was mutually beneficial, Malcolm X needed somebody famous to convert to the Nation of Islam, to bring more credibility to the nation, and to show and help expand it to more people. Because if a person like Muhammad Ali, that a lot of people looked up to, was in it, more people would consider. And then Muhammad Ali needed a spiritual leader, and didn't want to get caught up in the life at that young age, which I think was really smart on his part. Keisha says, I'm halfway through. The acting is great. Well, I hope you just don't watch it right now. Just wait until after 9 o'clock, and then you can watch the second half. And when you watch it, one of the things I want you to remember, and this isn't a spoiler because, again, this is history, is that as you watch that, remember that really happened. And 14 months later, half of those people were dead. Killed. Murdered. And unfortunately, we live in a community where you have to worry about the impact of the streets. And then you have to worry about the impact of scrupulous characters that are connected to maybe, and they're, the FBI or whatever the case may be. If you saw the movie, just drop me a line in the comments and let me know what you thought. If you're tuning in to see this conversation about school closures, the conversation will start in 4 minutes. I want to thank you for tuning in. Earlier, if you're just tuning in, earlier we talked about, we opened with a short conversation about G Money Payroll, a hip hop and producer legend in Camden that passed away a few days ago. He was a part of the WCMD Media and Dare Academy family. And I give my condolences to his family and to the entire team of people that he worked with. We also talked about One Night in Miami, the movie on Amazon Prime right now that you can watch. I ask that you tune in and see it, and you can learn and then read about that story afterwards, and you'll learn how a lot of history is wrapped into it. And the last point I want to make about it is this idea of glorification, because you have 3 or 4 people here who were in industries that have often been glorified by white racists who try to prove their lack of bigotry through their fascination with Black athletes, Black entertainers. Well, there are 2 athletes because one's a boxer and one's a football player, but athletes and entertainers. Oh, if you throwing that ball, you bouncing that ball, you hitting that ball. Oh yes, they sure do love you. you sure is their favorite now, huh? So it's up to you as an athlete to not be used for your entertainment value, but use that opportunity to have access to people, to learn how to work with a team, to be physically fit. Use that as an opportunity to make money and have a platform and be so great that you have a platform where you can say whatever you want and deal with the consequences, like Colin Kaepernick. This man kneeled at a football game during the national anthem and hasn't played a season since. And you have people who are in law enforcement storm the United States Capitol to exercise an insurrection. And some of these people might get off with probation. What kind of country is this? And why is it that we as Black people, and I'm going to specifically speak to my people for a moment, why can't we do any better than this? We must have spaces for intellectual conversations. We must have a space for intellectual conversations. We must be able to disagree with each other on policy and strategy and still be cordial and respectful, and not let it ever get to a point of being mean and hateful to one another because of a disagreement related to politics or strategy. Now, with that said, everybody got to be down for the economic and social uplifting of our people. We have too many people that are dying, that are sick, that are unemployed, that are hungry, that are some form of homeless, that are being abused sexually, emotionally, and physically, to give up on another generation of people because it's too complicated. So let's have these difficult conversations. Let's get loud. Let's have a strategy for how to use our power. Let's have a team of people who are in different parts. You got the musicians over here, and you got the union people over here, and you got the politicians over there, and you got the community people here. And yeah, you know what? You got the street people too. Everybody got to be represented. Everybody has access to different people. This is an election strategy. This is an organizing strategy. This is a show up. This is a show up strategy. Let's use our money, not instead of buying really nice and fancy things, to donate to these causes, to support people like the work that civil rights leaders have done in the past. All right. There's just one more comment I want to address, and then we're going to move on to the next thing, which is school closures. Okay. So Keisha Montgomery says the part where Jim Brown goes to visit the white guy and he says, we don't let niggers in the house. We don't let niggers in the house. As much as the man greatly respected Jim Brown as an athlete, but didn't respect him enough to have him in his house, and then has the audacity to call him a nigger. All right. I'm gonna take a few deep breaths, and then we are going to get into the very next topic. Thank you so much for everyone that is tuning in. My name is Sean Brown, and I am the Urban Disruptor, and I'm the host of Urban Disruptor's Weekly Wrap Up. If you're just tuning in, I want to just remind everyone that I went to my first school board meeting in the year 2007, and if I'm doing the math correct, that was 14 years ago. 3 years later, Mayor Dana Red, to her credit, appointed me to the school board. I didn't even support her campaign that year, so I actually was pretty impressed that she did that, and grateful for the opportunity. So from 2010 to 2013, I served on the school board. For the last 2 of those 3 years, I was the chairman of the policy committee. And after that, when Paymon was superintendent for, I think, 5 years, if I'm doing the math correctly, I just did it in my head again. I had a good bond and working relationship with Paymon as superintendent. And in the last few years, I've continued to pay attention and to be a voice of reason in the conversation about education. I'm the son of a public school teacher, a Camden public school teacher. I'll tell a story about that in a few minutes. And I'm the parent of a 9-year-old who's in 4th grade and a 7-year-old who is in 2nd grade, both doing virtual learning. And although on many days I wish I was around my children even more than I am, I do try my best to be an involved parent. And I have the perspective of mom being a teacher. And over the years, I've been a tutor, have worked and managed after school programs, been a mentor, and worked with young people of many ages dealing with and aware of many of their issues for a long time. I've also been a guest speaker in many schools, including colleges and most of the public schools throughout the city. And I was on the school board when Renaissance schools were approved by the school board. So that's just a real quick history of what brings me to this conversation. I thank you for tuning in. If you have any comments, feel free to put them in the comments. If you have comments that you don't want other people to see and you have my phone number, feel free to text me. I will do my best to look down and see if it's something that I can address. And there you go. So hopefully you are able to see this on YouTube, on WCMD Media. And please share this event so that people can see it and learn more from it. So here we go. Let me first say that the reason that I'm doing this is because I see misinformation, and anything that I might identify as misinformation, I'm gonna do my very best to address it, not just with words, but by maybe showing you the evidence of what's on the state's website, the district's website, but numbers, whatever it is, so that there's a full understanding of the situation that we're in and how we got there. Let me also be really, really clear that whether Katrina McCombs, the superintendent, or a person that we never heard of from Central Jersey that Governor Murphy and the commissioner appointed, schools in the next school year would close. This is inevitable. There is no pathway. There's no pathway out of the situation. And the reason there's no pathway out of the situation, the first reason is because of COVID-19 and businesses being closed, the tax revenues to the state have gone down. The numbers of state aid, the amount of money that the state of New Jersey executive branch of government has given to the Camden Board of Education has gone up year after year. and it's had to in order to keep the amount of schools open that have been open. They actually should have paid $6 million more last school year for vets and did not. Let me be really clear on these numbers, and I'm going to show you guys exactly what I'm talking about. So bear with me for a moment. And again, if you have any questions, let me know. Now, I'm not going to bore you with numbers this whole time, but I think this number is important enough for me to show. So for what first thing you see on the very first line, it says local tax levy. Local tax levy is all of the money that Camden taxpayers contribute to. You can imagine a pot that has money in it. So let's say this is all the money that goes, right? The numbers for many years is around $7.5 million that taxes had to be raised because of this, and because taxes have been raised for a long time, the Department of Education forced the city to raise taxes by $5 million, which it was. If you go down a little bit, you see the entire amount of the school district, the Board of Education budget, the school district budget. And by the way, all that money is for Renaissance schools, charter schools, and the district, not just the district. So the total amount is from this current year that we're in is $292 million. And out of $292 million, Camden taxpayers contribute $12 million, $12.7 million. Why am I telling you this? I'm telling you this because Camden taxpayers just started voting for school board members. Now 6 out of 9 are elected, but for many years had no vote of their school board members. They were appointed by the mayor. And before that, 3 of them were actually appointed by the governor in the late 2000s. Camden taxpayers do not contribute very much. Out of a $292 million pot of money, contribute $12.7 million. That means the state of New Jersey government is going to have a lot of say on what happens in our city, no matter who the superintendent is, no matter who the mayor is, no matter who's elected to the school board. And even if you increase the amount of money that Camden City taxpayers contribute to education in Camden and to city government for that matter, even if you increased it 5% every year, you still wouldn't even be close to contributing to the total amount it takes to educate children in the city. So the state will always have power and influence because they put more money into Camden than any other school district in the state of New Jersey. More money than anywhere else. If you look at if you looked on the budget, which you can get right off the district's website, if you go to the district's website, go to the bottom and look on the right, you'll see budget, and you can see these numbers for yourself. So that's the first part I just want to give everyone perspective of, is the amount that Camden taxpayers don't contribute. By the way, this is not a blame thing. It's not that it's not that we don't contribute more because people aren't paying their taxes. It's that there's not enough taxable properties and businesses in the city that can pay for the extreme cost of what it takes. All right. If you have any specific questions or any questions at all, ask and I'll be able to answer. So I did a lot of research and I was preparing for this. And as I did so, one of the things that I saw, and I'll share this with you, is I guess you could call it a statement that a statement that NJEA put out. And NJEA is the New Jersey Education Association. It's the statewide agency that represents teachers throughout New Jersey. And it says, tell Ms. McCombs, who's the superintendent, to keep all Camden City public schools open. Okay. One, I don't know who made this flyer. They probably should have said the word district instead of all. And open it makes people think of COVID, but whatever. And then it goes on to say a bunch of stuff. Closing 4 schools would involve upending the lives of hundreds of our students. True. Their families and the educators who staff those buildings. Also true. I'm going to address that. And at the very bottom, though, it says something. It says the decision is flat out wrong. There are only negative consequences. Unnecessarily closing schools hurts students, their families, the educators who work in them, and the community at large. For one thing, the decision being flat out wrong is curious language. And I only say that because the decision, the core of the decision is a financial decision that the district has no choice but to submit to. I've actually read several people say, oh, you can keep all the schools open, not lay off anybody, and cut savings in other ways. No, you cannot. That's just not true. It's impossible. If it's true, let me see it on a piece of paper. Write it down. Write down exactly what cuts would be made where there's no layoffs and there's no school closures. Write it down. Let me see it. Let me see what you're going to cut away. Because if you look at the entire budget, most of the budget goes to salary. Most of the budget, and this is true in any school district and businesses for that matter, most of the money goes to salaries. So if most of the money goes to salaries, when you have to make cuts, then most of those cuts will also then be salaries. This is mathematics. This is addition and subtraction. You would have to. Okay, let me just keep going. All right, next point. The other point I want to mention about this statement is an important one. And the other driving factor besides money itself is student performance. There are multiple ways to measure a student's performance. You can test them on material. You can do standardized testing. You can interview them, and you can do it. Well, you can check their portfolio, which is actually physically look at the schoolwork that they've done to assess how well that student is learning or not learning. The standardized way, meaning that we want to compare students throughout in a classroom, in a school, in a district, in a community, in a county, in the state, and the country, is standardized testing, where all the students in this state are taking the exact same test based off of a curriculum that's been approved by the district and the state. And based off of that, we decide and measure students on how well they are performing or not performing. If you were to list every single elementary and family or middle school in the district and charter school and Renaissance school, unfortunately, the district schools are performing lower than any charter school or any Renaissance school. I looked this up. If you look at the lowest performing charter school, their academic performance numbers that are reported are higher than the highest performing district school. I don't want you to hear this and think that I'm blaming anyone for this phenomenon, although there are people who are responsible for it. Untrue. Okay, Ms. Borelli. Ms. Borelli, if it's untrue, please show me. Please show me what school, and out here, let me show you exactly how I came up with this information. So, why am I not doing this right? Which one is this? All right, give me a second. All right, I'll do it right here. Okay. So if you go to New Jersey School Report Card, and go to performance reports, that's what they're called now. You can look this information. Oh, am I sharing the right screen? Oh, am I? Can you guys see? Oh, okay, yeah. Hold on, sorry guys, give me a second. I just want to make sure that you can see the screen, because I can't tell. Okay. And now here, let me show you exactly. Oh, look how behind this is. All right. Oh, good. Okay, you can see it. All right. So on here, if you go to select school year, as you can see, they don't have the most. It's not as up to date as it should be. because it was because the most recent school year is 2018 to 2019. And then you select the criteria that you want. So we're in Camden, and I'll select Camden High School, and then search for reports. And then when you search for reports, you look at a detailed report, and on that detailed report is where you get the information, academic achievement. Anyway, so you go there, and that's where you find the information. I'm not going to show it right now because I'm not trying to throw any particular school under the bus. That's not what this is about. But it is true. Oh, much of the report card is based on information is given by the school, true, and not things like average GPAs, testing, or any other data that is driven by curriculum or instruction. Okay. I'm not. What's curious about that statement, Miss Borelli, Luke, and I appreciate your time with the union as well, and as a teacher. But what's curious about that is that curriculum instruction and the PARCC test are supposed to be in sync with one another, according to the teaching standards. So when you look at the district curriculum on the website, it shows there's this standard. I was like, what's the word for it? The standard that it meets, because there's alignment in everything, vertical and horizontal alignment, so that what's being taught in the classroom, in the curriculum, in instruction in the classroom, and then what students are being tested on match one another. You're not teaching to the test. The test itself is measuring achievement based off of the same things that are taught in the curriculum. So standards drives instruction, right? I gotta say, I mean, if the answer is what's being on the test and what's being taught in the classroom are two different things, I mean, that's obviously a problem. I don't know. All right, I'm not sure why we have a difference of opinion on that, because I thought that was actually pretty established, but it could happen. Let's see what we can figure out. Let me move on. Okay. All right, next. The current commissioner has expressed at State Board of Education meetings the importance of the district getting its books together well. And in that, there are people who have worked in the district who no longer work in the district. There are people who were working in Trenton and doing things on the state level that are now supportive of the district on the local level to get a grip on the financial thing, the finances of the district. What I've read some people write on social media, including some of the leadership at CEA, seems to be an almost personal attack on the superintendent, Katrina McCombs. Now, Katrina McCombs was a teacher. I think she was a teacher's assistant at first, a teacher, vice principal, director of early childhood, and deputy superintendent. And in all of those roles, perform well. This is not a case of the Peter principle where a person gets to the top level and then isn't able to, like, they just can't figure it out. Y'all think that you would be superintendent right now and you would figure it out? Where would the money come from? You have significant structural issues in classrooms, in auditoriums, in cafeterias, in offices throughout the district, from a lack of financial resources to pay for upkeep of those specific things. Now, Camden High is not there anymore, but I remember myself when I was in school, we were being in Camden High in the cafeteria and looking up, and I don't know what that black stuff that was coming out the ceiling was. I remember being at Bonsall when Bonsall was a district school and being in a special education classroom that actually Jonathan Taylor, who's now principal of Camden High, it was his classroom, and he taught in the classroom. And I remember the heat was blowing out 90-degree air from one side, and the window was cracked on the other side because it was so drastically hot in the room. I remember going into bathrooms in some of the schools and not seeing the toilet paper thing is just. I have pictures of this. Toilet paper thing is just completely off. There's no toilet paper on there. Now I know a lot of those issues have been addressed. So when and I see some of your comments, but it doesn't sync with what I said. But when it comes to like whose fault is it, there have been let me I told you guys in the very beginning how long I've been going to school board meetings and involved in public education for 14 years. Annette Knox was superintendent. I'm not going to say Annette Knox was a good superintendent or a bad superintendent. I don't know enough about what her leadership brought and didn't bring. And my focus was on very specific things when I was younger. But I know Dr. Young was not a great superintendent. And she had some ridiculous people in important positions. And a few really good people were not successful because of her leadership style. And I remember a few of you sitting in those meetings and not really saying much, or trying to get me to say it, but not being willing to really cause the uproar that was necessary because of what was happening to our school district then. That was not good leadership. There were some excellent people who worked really hard and did some amazing things. But the district has struggled to have the strongest, best people in certain positions for years. Facilities is the best example of it. And I'm not going to say the guy's name, but the guy that was in charge of facilities when I was on the school board, I don't really think had a great grip on what was going on. And to Paymon's credit, the guy didn't stay much. The guy didn't stay long once Paymon was there. And I can't speak enough to know, because some of you watching know better than I do, facilities person by facilities person, how good or bad they were. But I'm telling you, what I know for sure is that the facilities guy, and what's her face's title? Abbott facilitator or architect or whatever. Horrible. I would ask basic questions that anybody in that position should be able to answer, and they wouldn't know what's going on. I remember the elevators in the central office at Front and Cooper being fixed. There was one elevator not working more so than it was, where we spend $100,000 every time we need to get an elevator fixed. I remember the days of computers and tablets and equipment just sitting around in a warehouse by the central office, not being delivered to the schools in a way that it should have been. And I'm glad I get to speak in that time period, because that's when I was there the most and saw the most of what was going on. And what I can tell you is that those issues that existed then have taken time to fix. And some of these issues may not have been fixed yet. Since I'm telling stories, let me tell another story about my time on the school board. So there's a rule. There's all these rules that school board members have to follow. Clayton, you're gonna see this. You're gonna realize what these rules are day by day, month by month. So there are all these rules. So one of the rules is if you're on a school board and you have a parent, spouse, child that is an employee of the district, as a school board member, you cannot participate in union negotiation discussions at all. Can't be in a room or anything. Can't know what's going on. So whenever this would happen, me and Miss Susan Dunbar Bay and I would have to walk out the room. So my mom retires after my second year on the school board. My mom retires. So my mom's last month was in June, and the following month in July, now I get to participate in union negotiations in the conversations. I'm excited. Like, yes, I get to find out what's going on. So I remember this clearly. Sarah Davis on the school board. This is in closed session. Sarah Davis is to my right, who represented the board. She was a former union president herself. Lou Lessick is sitting over here, who was the labor attorney at the time with Brown and Connery. And so I'm so excited. I'm finally going to hear what's going on in the union negotiations. Now, before I tell you what they said, let me remind you: Dr. Young, Andrea Kerwin, Reuben Mills, Patricia Kenny, All the leaders had mentioned issues, constraints, things they couldn't get done because of the CEA contract. Things they couldn't get done because of the CEA contract. So I'm thinking, well, of course, between the central office and the board members, everybody's going to coalesce and say, well, union, these are the concessions that we want. This is the way it's going to be. We don't want this to happen. We don't want that to happen. We're going to change this. We're going to change that. Get into the closed session. Get my first update. Only thing they talked about, both sides, only thing they talked about was salary. Both sides. The only discussion point, the only reason the contract had not been approved by that point was they could not agree on salary increases. For a 3-year contract, how much would a raise be year by year? It was the only thing they couldn't figure out. None of the stuff that had been talked about before had been in these meetings when I was able to participate, had been that information been transferred into union negotiations with the district. And boy, was I disappointed in that. I was embarrassed as a school board member. And as the son of a public school teacher, I was embarrassed on behalf of the union because I knew the kind of supports that my mom really needed to be successful in the classroom as a teacher. I remember I'm talking to my mom one day and she's like, Sean, I'm a little distracted because I have to order these school buses for a trip. I'm like, Mom, you're a science teacher. Why are you ordering school buses? Like, they don't have someone else to do that. Like, well, and she didn't really like, I was on school board at the time. She didn't really want to complain about it or throw anyone under the bus. And I thought that was like really weird that a classroom teacher is ordering school buses for a trip, like getting quotes and stuff for a trip. All right. Untrue. I don't know what's untrue, Ms. Borelli. Ms. Borelli, if you're saying something that you think is untrue, just do me a favor and just give me a little bit more details. So here is the contract. Can y'all see this? 2015 to 2018. Here's the contract. So this is really more so. This was the contract that Paymon and his team worked on. So I've had this contract for a few weeks, and I had a chance to read it. I did leave it because I couldn't read it forever, but to read it. And one thing that I was happy to see is some of the stuff that I thought that should have been added in the previous contract, and which I guess would have been 2012, was actually in this contract. So that was good to see. But one of the things in here I don't like is the starting salary of teachers and how they do raises and things like that. When you think about the purpose of a union, the union's job must be to protect the members of its union. That's who elects the leadership. That's inevitably what they're there to do, protect the people that are in it. But unfortunately, because we live in a world where conflict is natural, and it naturally occurs in situations where self-interest is different, what's good for a teacher is not always good for a student. It may almost always be good for a student. And it might be unrealistic to think that it will always be in the best interest of the student as well. But what's in the interest of a teacher is not necessarily in the interest of a student. Let me give you an example of what I mean. I'm not saying it's good for the teachers, but I like the idea, the concept that teachers at Mastery, KIT, and Uncommon have regular weekly professional development where schools are closed and they have hours and hours of professional development. And I understand that some people, and I read it in the comments, don't want to admit this is true. But the fact is those schools, those students who are from the same Camden community are outperforming district students, not by just a couple of percentage points, but by double digits. And it's hard for me to believe that the level of professional development they give their teachers can't be a deciding factor on what actually goes on in the classroom. Not everything a teacher learned in college and not everything a teacher learns in a few days of professional development in the district is enough. This is my opinion. This is my perspective. All right, let me get back to my notes. Okay, So the superintendent, Katrina McCombs, inherited a few issues. One is CUSAC, how the district is rated. And finance was probably the worst category and the hardest to fix and hardest to get a grip of, because when it comes to like lesson plans and the teacher teaching, I can go to that classroom, I can see exactly what the teacher is teaching. I can look at the textbooks and see that they were ordered. But when it comes to making sure that every bill was paid on time, the invoices and requisitions and the way all those things work between school and central office, it's things that needed work for a long time. The other thing that was inherited was a facility. It was a need for better school structures and facilities. What we see in the school closure process is that whatever school a student ends up in, it appears right now that school will be a better performing school in a nicer and better and upgraded facility like our students deserve. Okay. I just want to let me, I'll get back. I'll get to that comment. Let me stick to my notes. So the district has more schools per student than any other in the state. So if you look at the amount of students that are in the district and the amount of school buildings, and you do the math, you'll find that there are school buildings that once upon a time had 800 students, might now have 600 students, 500 students. So somebody's going to say, oh yeah, well, that's because of Camden enrollment. It's not because of Camden enrollment. Camden enrollment is nothing but a mechanism for people to select the school choice that they have. Now, somebody else is going to say, oh yeah, well, there's charter and Renaissance schools, they offer students shiny objects, and the students and the parents like those shiny objects, and they go chase after them. Well, that might be true. You might have an argument there. And I'm going to get a little bit later about what we should do about the true problems that exist with Renaissance schools. But I think the fact that they offer their students stuff and trips is a good thing, that they can figure out financially a way to do it. Now, there's also great and extreme inequity in charter and Renaissance versus district schools. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. Next, if there was a way to keep all the schools open, improve them academically, and have the money to pay for that, of course, this superintendent and the other superintendent would do that. I don't understand the argument of, because the superintendent attempted to figure out, is there a way to keep schools open? Is there a way to make them better? And then realize, no, there isn't a way, because there's not enough money to pay for it, because these things come at a cost. That doesn't mean that the superintendent lied. It means that that plan ultimately wasn't successful. When I was in graduate school, I learned how to do, in a class called policy analysis, a cost-benefit analysis. In a cost-benefit analysis, you look at every option you possibly have, and you go through a series of steps to see which of them is the most financially feasible. Which of them can you afford? So if I'm working with a team over here, going through the cost-benefit analysis to say, hey team, what are your ideas for what you want to see? By the time we get to the last line on the chart, you're going to see the cost of it. And then you see how much money you have. Are you in the negative? Are you in a positive? Or are you neutral financially? Why would a person risk harming a relationship by calling the person names, by exposing a plan and misrepresenting what it is and what it isn't? The pandemic has influenced the amount of money the state government has and the amount of money the city of Camden will collect in taxes. The revenue isn't there as it was when the economy was doing better. The money isn't there. And on top of that, there are too many schools for the amount of students anyway. These are not decisions that are being made in Camden. These are decisions that are being made in Trenton. And we want to reclaim our power. We have to reclaim our power by understanding the reality of the financial situation that our community is in. Now, look, I'm all for it. I'm not here to say that any of these people are doing the best that they possibly can do, because as a city government, we should be doing way more to get more homeowners in homes, to get businesses occupying and paying taxes, to make sure that the companies that got tax incentives and didn't pay taxes are doing their own version of a pilot, at least contributing something to the city because they're here. Because when Hall Tech, 76ers, and whoever else it is call the police and call 911, they should have contributed to that service that they are then benefiting from in the form of safety. These are the types of issues that really we should, as an entire community, should be focused on. We are here because there was a process. There was a firm that was hired. It wasn't done in-house. There was a firm that was hired that facilitated a long-term planning committee. Around 40 people, including myself, who were on that committee. There were people on that committee that I would not have chosen myself. Because before this process, I didn't think that certain folks had enough information to be able to participate in a way that their voice would have credibility. But boy, was I arrogant and wrong in thinking that. Because the reality is, in the conversations that I've had, people can see the information that's presented, people can understand the situation that the district is in. People can see that there's no point in playing a blame game. Instead, figure out, what are we going to do now that we see the situation, and how do we best make sure that students, that children, are getting the best education in the best circumstances they possibly can. And I'm not going to say everybody in the committee agrees, but if this is what's going to happen, let's make sure the least amount of harm is done. If this is going to happen, and it is, let's make sure we focus on what we're best at as a community, what we're best at as a district. When whatever schools are finally chosen to close, those students will be able to go to other district schools that are somewhat close by. My understanding is there will be more news about this tomorrow, but that's not my news to share. But what I can say about that process is that some of those students their parents will instead choose to send them to a charter or Renaissance school. This happens all the time, where parents choose to not send their children to a district school or any school in Camden or any public school in Camden. People move. Our population is decreasing, especially in the Black community in Camden. People are moving to Pennsauken, to Sicklerville, to Merchantville, to Lindenwold, to Willingboro, to Philly. It happens all the time. Many eighth graders end up going to Camden County Technical School. I had a chance to go to Pennsauken High, my alma mater, a few weeks ago, and saw what they did in response. Let me keep going. The district cannot make all schools better academically and structurally. There is not enough. The district cannot make all schools better academically and structurally. There isn't enough money for that to occur. Not one critic of this plan has offered a realistic alternative, which includes fixing the buildings and improving academic outcomes. I read what my old friend from Rutgers, Rand Miller, wrote. My friend, Professor Stephen Danley, read what he wrote, and read what Union President Keith Benson wrote. And in it, there are these passionate pleas to keep schools open so that families and children's lives aren't disrupted. And I completely agree with that. I don't like the idea of any family, especially in the delicate time that we're in, of their lives being disrupted. But I have to say this again, we are past that point. So instead, there are a few things that we should be I think there are a few things that we should work on, and then I'm going to call. If you want to call in, somebody called in. I'm not going to say you where I saw you try to call in. If you want to call in through video, feel free, and I'll bring you on. And we'll have a friendly, kind, nice conversation. And I'm going to read the comments in a second. But let me go through what I think are the good things that we could be focused and thinking about right now. So first, since the union is in negotiations with the district, and I have no idea where those negotiations stand, the first thing that I want to say is, please, union leadership, please do not have the negotiations centered around just salary. Let it be beyond that. And on the point of salary, if you are going to include salary, y'all gotta, it's in the contract. You gotta pay your security officers more. Paraprofessionals need to get paid more. The salary guide should match where we are as a society and make sure that that people who are a part of the core part of the school are getting paid for their work. Some of these salaries, people starting at $24,000 a year, clerks starting at $24,000 a year. I think that's too low. But of course, now for every dollar that you increase, you have to figure out a way to offset those costs. So how are you going to get when you think that there are cost savings that can occur, they can allow all schools to stay open? Are you able to do that and still get the raises? Because you need to get this contract ended June 30th, 2018. So that means everybody's going to get a nice check from the 2018-20 school year and the 2021 school year when you get your new contract, because that's the way contracts work. It will be retroactive to the start date of the new contract, which will include those raises from those previous times. But the union negotiations, I hope and pray, and again, I have no idea. They're not just on salary, and if they are, at least for the part that is, make sure that those lowest paid people, security, clerks, paraprofessionals, are paid more. The next part, we know now that by seniority and what the law says that there will be layoffs. It hasn't been announced, but I believe that it's inevitable. My very last day on the school board was a vote to lay people off, and it was gut-wrenching. I was nauseous. When I said the word yes, I whispered it and could barely get it out, almost with a feeling of shame to even vote on something where I knew that somebody wouldn't have a job anymore. I live in this community. These are my cousins. These are family members. My neighbors, people I see at the grocery store. I know how hard many people work. I know the struggles that they have in their families. I don't want to be responsible for anybody losing their job. But when we're in the public space, we do have to act in the general, largest public interest. And there is harm that is caused by that. And it is sad and it is unfortunate. But at this point, it is unavoidable. It's unavoidable. And what happens is when people say, oh, well, this is because of this or this is because of that, their starting point for when they think that something bad happened will always be with a bad guy of a person that they don't like and have demonized. This person did this thing that wasn't good. That person did that thing that wasn't good. And then that's what started it. You got to go back years and years to see what occurred here. And for one thing, and this is something that is not easy to say and not easy for some people to hear, but not every great teacher that was retired was replaced with a great teacher. Not every great teacher from the Camden School District that retired was replaced with another great teacher. Some of them were, maybe many of them were, but not all of them. And some of the harm that's done with this attack that we have right now towards the district is that if I'm thinking about becoming a teacher and I Google Camden, well, Camden looks like the Camden School District situation looks like it's unstable. Why would I want to? Why, if I'm a brilliant person, work great with children, why would I set myself up for that challenge? Very few people do that. And God bless and thank you to those that do. But it's very, very, very few people. Education is tough enough. I get impatient with my own children after a half hour sometimes. Do you guys know how some of these children are out here in this community? Do you want to spend 8 hours with them? Do you want to spend 8 hours with them? It is a very difficult and complex job. And those teachers in the district, Renaissance schools, wherever they are, deserve a decent salary, resources to support their work, social and emotional supports, a structure which allows them to do lesson planning and teaching in a way that is best for students and prepares students for success both in and outside of the classroom. And those teachers should be culturally aware of Camden as a community, meaning they're either Black or brown or have an understanding of what poor Black and brown people have gone through for generations, where their biases are checked at the door. But do we really think that this is where we're headed on a great recruitment strategy? Because calling the superintendent names ain't a great recruitment strategy. Exposing plans is not a great recruitment strategy for doing something that is very important, which is getting talented people to be teachers in our city. We must have equity in school types. This is very important, and I'm almost done here. That I'm going to go through the comments. The way that the district has to pay for facility upgrades and the way Mastery and Common Kit and the charter schools pay for upgrades is a completely different set of rules. Only because the district is a district and the Renaissance and charter schools are Renaissance and charter schools. Completely different set of rules. Those rules should be equal. Either Renaissance and charter schools should have to go through SDA, the School Development Authority, like the district schools do, where the district should be able to do its own bidding and contracting on its own and money raised for it without the state government getting involved, one way or another. And this is a fight that all of us should agree with. It doesn't make any sense for some schools for it to be easier for them to borrow money than others. But here's the thing about our community, guys. We have to be willing to listen to things like this and figure out who to get connected to and where to learn the information from and how to organize in order to get these laws changed. We should be calling Bill Moen, Bill Spearman, and Nelson Cruz Perez, our state legislators, our assemblymen and our state senator, and asking them to support equity in public education. Another idea, force Renaissance and charter schools to show their student mobility on a weekly basis. What is student mobility? Student mobility is the amount of students that move either in or out of a school, that are either transfer into a school or out of a school. If you start making Renaissance and charter schools explain on paper why their student numbers are decreasing, they may be less likely to remove problematic students. Let's make this a regulation or a law in New Jersey to bring equity to public education so that the district doesn't become the dumping ground of students that other schools couldn't deal with. The CEA should continue in whatever way it can support the best education for students. Uncommon's curriculum, in particular math, is considered one of the best, if not the best, in the United States of America. Uncommon's curriculum is so good that Mastery and KIPP use it with a few modifications. They do not use Uncommon's classroom norms, which might be a good thing. But they do use their curriculum. What is being taught in the classroom matters. The way we teach math, whether it's grouping or carry, it matters. And the way teachers are prepared and trained for it, it matters too. There is something fundamentally off in some of our schools. It may be how we address the parents. It may be how we educate students with special needs. But whatever those things are should be exposed and discussed. And there should be a strategy of what we should do to fix it. And the last thing that I would say is critically important to the success of this district is that when Camden High School opens next school year, it has a true CTE, career and technical education, formerly known as vocational education program that's full of equipment, fully staffed classrooms, and teachers that have the specialization and credentials to teach those subjects, whether it's auto body, metal shop, culinary arts. Pensacola High learned this. They saw how many students were going to Camden County Technical Schools and how much money was following those students to Camden County Technical Schools, and they built the stuff themselves, and it's in their basement now. And students take the classes, and less students went off to Camden County Technical School. Let's look over to see what the comments say. When looking at, I'm just going to start from 905 for some reason. Well, no, let me not do that. Let me go up all the way. All right. All right, Gary Fraser. Hey, Gary. Well, it's 940 days on the expired contract now. It may be. That may be. Let me be really clear that every single union contract in America has a sentence in it that says, until the next contract is approved, all the provisions in this contract stick. The only thing that hasn't stuck is raises. That's why I said earlier that the good news with that is, although teachers haven't had a raise since June 2018, when the new contract is at some point approved, and it will be inevitably, they will get back pay for that time period. So sometimes, teachers end up getting an extra check for $4,000 or $5,000. All right. Carabelli, I have been on negotiations for several contracts. You heard the board's version. Money is not what drives our contract. If that was true, our top teachers have not had an increase in 2 contracts over 6 years because of Chapter 78. Top teachers made less than 10 years ago. Okay. They are not output. Okay. Ms. Borelli, Luke, I appreciate you saying this. But unfortunately, this is like, I keep getting these like half statements where it's like, oh, no, that's not what happened. It was about other stuff, but then you never say what the other stuff was. Oh, we can keep all the schools open. We had to just spend money differently, but then you don't say how to spend money differently. We can educate students better. Okay. Let me keep reading. They are not outperforming students from traditional schools. So it's almost like I don't know what to do with this information because, again, I looked at the school report cards. This is public information that the state has available. And I do agree. I do understand the point that is not necessarily it's not a reliable measure of intelligence. It's not a reliable measure of intelligence. It is a reliable measure of test taking, but it is standardized. And even when you compare Camden to what the state refers to as district factor group. So that's Newark, Jersey City, Patterson, Atlantic City, Pleasantville, Trenton, Vineland, Millville, urban districts that have a similar level of poverty. Some of our schools are still struggling and at the bottom of that tier. All right, let me move on. Hendricks, is there a difference in funding between these schools? If so, where does the money come from? All right, so all of the money, all money that is in the district comes from all the money. All right, let me back up. There are a few revenue sources. One is the federal government, which isn't very much. State government, which in Camden is a huge amount, in different categories of how the state gives the district money. And then what the district brings in from Camden taxpayers. When I pay rent, but when I pay my property taxes through my rent, this is not an exact percentage, but about 30%, about 8% goes to the county. These numbers are about to be really off. 20-something% goes to the city. And then like 70, maybe 60-something% goes to the district. When you pay your property taxes, the money goes to the county, city, and in the district. Because of a law because of a Supreme Court decision from many, many years ago, Abbott versus Burke, the state government was put in a position of saying, we can't just allow municipalities to get their funding only from property taxes, because if they don't get enough from property taxes, they're going to have real skimpy budgets. So the state puts money into it. And in that they have power. All right. Who chooses who's on the committee? And you may have said this already, but what schools are closing besides Wiggins? Okay. The superintendent and her team chose who was on the committee. This was from months and months ago. I want to say the first meeting was in October, but the decision really started maybe even in the summer. It's like a questionnaire that I had to fill out. And so the district chose, but like I said, they weren't being prejudiced in how they chose people. I don't mean prejudice in an ethnic way. I mean in terms of ideology. There are people who have all different views on education that are on the committee. Next, I pray it all works out in the interest of the children. And that's the thing. What's unfortunately, we're in a position in Camden where what's in the best interest of the child, what's in the best interest of the district, and what's in the best interest of district staff may not all be, they're not lined up, and they're not the same thing, unfortunately. Of course, I think we all wish we lived in a world where all teachers and all educators and all faculty and staff in the school could be happy. The district central office could be satisfied and happy with what's going on. The state can look at Camden and say, great, guys, you're doing fantastic. And the students are performing and doing great, right? That's the ideal, but we are not there. In fact, in some of those categories, we're not even close. Over 900 days without a contract. You have a contract. The contract's been extended. The provisions, except for salary. So if you want to say 900 days without a raise, I feel you on that. I want you to get your raise. You've worked hard. People deserve raises. We agree by not giving top administrators $80,000 stipends. So I'm not exactly sure what that refers to. I'm guessing, Ms. Borelli, Luke, you said that when I mentioned that the security and paraprofessionals should get paid more, and you're getting at that some of the administrators are overpaid. Only thing I can say about how much administrators are paid is that it has to be competitive to what other people make in other places, or it'll be hard to get administrators. You only have so many people with the masters and certification in those categories. I think, if I'm not right, somebody let me know. Okay. Well, we are glad you're not sitting on the board now. Lost some respect. Very disappointed. Okay. Well, right back at you. I salute all teachers. Yes. You as you should. Thank you. Brian. Hey, Brian. How do you recruit people to teach when they have no job security? Absolutely. Especially when the seniority rule is used. So if you're first to come, you're first to go when there are layoffs. This is an issue. I think in this, Brian, I don't want to read into what you're saying, but it's like the no job security thing. I don't blame the CEA. I don't blame the district. I don't blame the state. This is just circumstances of a whole bunch of weirdness going on over years. And this is what it's led up to. I can't blame Governor Murphy, Repollet, Keith, Katrina. It's not about that. It's not about that. I actually do want to go back a little bit and just say this to Karen Borelli about losing respect for me. I don't understand what you're losing respect about. I said this earlier, I'm saying this again. We all make assumptions about things, right? And hopefully, if I'm an educated person, which I am, and I'm aware, which I try to be, even as we make assumptions, they're based off of facts and information. Some of the Renaissance schools are doing great with certain things. Some of the district schools are doing great with certain things. But people have a misunderstanding sometimes of the facts, and you can look over there and say, hey, that's not right. That's broken. That's not going well, right? I got a lot to say about classroom norms and behavior tactics that Uncommon uses. There's some things that they do that I don't like. But then I talk to my friends whose children go there, and they're like, well, I like this because my child needs this or that. My child wasn't adapt to it. Their child was. I don't know one parent in Camden that doesn't have a complaint about a school in Camden, and it's all school types. Every school gets it. If you are looking for a person to confirm your biases, to tell you that you're doing great, to tell you that everything's going to be okay, and fight for the sake of fighting, I'm not that guy. And I'm not sure who that person is. See, the activist community, people's children, nephews, nieces have gone to all sorts of schools. So in that, people have seen what certain schools are able to deliver and offer and what schools are not. And at the end of the day, there are no perfect schools in Camden. I'm just going back to the comments. I sat in discussions about a universal code of conduct and universal expulsion policy. Run schools were not willing. Yeah, well, and that's messed up. I do not. Shall I share this story? Yes, I'm gonna share the story. You see me thinking it through. So my son is in after school program. My youngest son, it goes like to a student. They suspended him from the after school program for a few days. And I'm in the office talking to this lady saying that like the pandemization of a gun shouldn't result in my son being removed from the program for a few days. And she's like just being so kind with a smile on her face and like nodding and being real receptive and just like repeats like a robot, like we absolutely care about the safety of our children, and we find certain things to be unacceptable, and therefore there have to be consequences for these actions. And I'm like, what? He just went like that. No harm. My son's like, there wasn't any harm done. And I didn't like it. I disagreed with it strongly. But then I talked to a couple of my friends about it that lived in Camden all their lives. They're like, well, you know, Sean, there are kids whose parents do bad things with guns. And in that, the school has seen these things and is taken it super seriously. So although that consequence really didn't necessarily apply to your son, they're going to apply the rules universally. Years ago, the Camden High School principal, and I won't say his name, was known for suspending students for 10 days for moderate and minor infractions. Known for it. The district doesn't do that anymore. The level of discipline in some of the Renaissance and some of the charter schools is ridiculous. I know just as many cases though where there are no consequences, just as I do is when the consequences are too severe. I think a lot of schools are trying to figure this out, and I hope they do. I don't like that some of these schools, the only Black person in the school is the dean of culture and climate in some of these Renaissance and charter schools. I'm not here to say that they are perfect and they have all the answers. What I am here to say is, if you're going to continue to live in Camden and have children that go to school in Camden, do not dismiss our Renaissance school as an option for you. Pay attention to what Camden enrollment does in that. And if people want to get into the enrollment numbers of how many students are assigned to schools, that is a conversation that makes sense. But remember this: in the original law of the Urban Hope Act, it was supposed to be this. Let me be super clear on this. I'm at a meeting. I lived on 7th and Berkeley. I lived on 7th and Berkeley for several years, and I was part of the neighborhood organization when they were going through a redevelopment plan. At the time, Katrina McCombs was principal of Landing Square. That's where I met her. The school collapsed, was closed, and I remember Mondelisa Davis in particular came to a school board meeting, and I don't want to say he used profanity, he laid this out, cursed the board out and the superintendent out because the students' bus stop was on a drug set and there was all these issues with the bus and the students getting picked up. And I'm horrified, and the whole board was. And I'm glad Mr. Davis brought that to our attention. To his credit, Reuben Mills drove there the next morning and sat there to see it for himself and saw what was going on. In that situation, as the conversations are going to how to rebuild Landing Square as a public school, I realized that the opportunity drifted because the board made mistakes a few years before I got on. And at 08 and 09, they made a few mistakes and weren't, and I don't know if there was anything else going on behind the scenes at that point in time, but it became clear that there would not be a Landing Square school rebuilt as we previously thought. Like the plans were drawn and everything. And I heard the governor say it out of his own mouth and promise the people of the neighborhood downtown, Landing Square neighborhood, a school that never popped up. So just like Katrina was promised a school, she was also promised $6 million for vets that never came. So when the opportunity comes for a school in the neighborhood in the form of a Renaissance school from Kip, who is known to have good curriculum and instruction, and again, not perfect, right? We're not talking about 100% of the students do absolutely great. We're not saying they don't have any issues, but we're saying that in Newark, where I went to visit and see for myself, that they were able to get some good things done in terms of educating students. So the original Urban Hope Act said there would be one Renaissance, that once approved, there would be one Renaissance school in where Kip Norcross is right now, but that would be the neighborhood school with boundaries. So if you live within certain boundaries, that was your school and that was it. I'm actually not exactly sure what happened in 2013 or 2014 that made that change where any student that lived in the city could go to the Renaissance school. I don't know what happened with that. And I don't know enough about it even to say if it was good or bad, because I can see good and bad in both ways. I want to see the school board members be successful. I want to see the superintendent, Katrina McCombs, not only be successful, but feel supported by the commissioner, but also by the education community because of the situation that the district finds itself in. There should be no name calling. There should be no posters insulting a woman of integrity. There should be no one questioning her loyalty to politics, because I just don't see how that's interfered with this. This is a numbers game. The money isn't there to pay for everything that will be necessary. And there aren't enough students in the district anyway. Let's focus on the impact of layoffs. Make sure that there are job fairs. Make sure that we're working with Camden Works. Make sure that anyone that is laid off is able to land back on their feet immediately. If we know this is coming, we can get that started now. Let's fight for the laws and make changes in the laws that we have that impact how these things are happening. Let's make sure teachers have as much time as they really need for true professional development in the district, just like they do at Renaissance schools. Let's make sure Camden High has the best career and technical education program and is able to do a great job of integrating medical arts, creative arts, and Big Picture Learning Academy into that school. Let me go back to the comments. And thank you for continuing to tune in. I'm like well above time and you guys have stuck through. So Hendrik says, I understand your explanation of where these funds come from, but why does there seem to be a disparity between charter and public schools? Like you mentioned earlier, these schools are in better conditions, can afford to give out free tablets and have the latest technologies and offer teachers more professional development. Is it as simple as mismanagement of funds on the part of the public schools? Are charters allocating these resources more efficiently? What is contributing to these disparities? Well, Hendrik, those are all great questions. I think they're perfectly framed. I got to tell you, I've asked some of these questions myself. Let me see if I can break down some of this. So for one, Renaissance schools get 95% of student expenditure of a district student, and charter schools get 90% of student expenditures for a district student. Meaning that if the district student, let's say, gets $20,000, then in the Renaissance school, that student would get 95% of that, and in a charter school will get 90% of it. So when I went to KIT, when I went to KIT back in 2013 and got a tour of the schools, I saw this. I saw the great technology, the trips that the students took every year. I'm not sure if every student had a tablet, but I saw how they were able to do that. And I asked this question. And I do think, I don't want to say it comes to necessarily mismanagement of funds on the district end, but I do think they do things a little bit differently. Rafia, I'm going to end this in a few minutes, guys. Rafia Hickson says school to prison pipeline. School to prison pipeline refers to the idea of where does the prison industrial complex actually begin? It doesn't begin in a prison cell. It doesn't begin in a jail. And it doesn't begin with a police officer. It actually begins in schools. It actually begins with vice principals and principals. It begins with charter schools that want to remove their worst performing or worst behaving students. It begins with schools that are willing to expel the student for fighting more than a few times, when a student might need therapy or something therapeutic instead. The prison to school pipeline happens when police officers are called instead of therapists or counselors. The school to prison pipeline happens when parents are in their room yelling and screaming and over disciplining without being given them emotional and social supports that they may need to have their trauma addressed so they can focus on their children's education better. So the school to prison pipeline issue is less severe than it was, I would say, 10 years ago because the tides have changed. But I will say that this is something I'm proud that the district has looked at and taken seriously over the years and has made really good strides on. All right, Gary Frazier, and this might be the last comment, says, why is the money not there? And if the money is not there, why are we trying to keep structural buildings open? The district tried the same thing 6 years ago with the same schools, and the commissioner accepted the proposal. Why now are we here not looking to close some of the charters who have not yet met full capacity? So the thing about them meeting, the charter school meeting full capacity or not, that it doesn't almost matter if the charter school building can fit 1,000 students, but has 800 students, as long as they can afford, they have a lease on the building, they have a mortgage on the building, whatever, as long as they can afford the bills of the building costs, the teachers, it doesn't matter if it's at full capacity or not. Kip Norcross School rents a wing of its building to Center for Family Services for their private daycare program. So there are ways that a school can actually make money from its full facility as well, although that was designed to have a preschool there to make it convenient for parents. Let me go to another one of your questions that you asked in this, Gary. Why is the money not there? Well, the biggest reason the money is not there is because tax revenues, money that taxpayers contribute to the state of New Jersey fund, it's just not as much money, so the state can't afford to give Camden as much money as it has before. And the state says that we want to make sure that your finances are correct and that you close schools and have less schools because then we won't have to give you as much anyway. You think these people, I don't care if they're black, white, Republican, Democrat, whatever, these legislators, these folks from North Jersey, from Newark, from Hudson County, Essex County, Union County, Mercer County, they do not care about Camden. They do not like South Jersey. They don't care about Camden, and they don't want to see any more money going to this area. So there's always political pressure in the legislature, which saves it. And believe it or not, it's this coalition that we have in South Jersey with Lee Greenwald as the majority leader and Bramnick being friendly with the South Jersey legislators, who's the speaker, that actually keeps some of this money continuing to flow. It's one of the weird things about the so-called machine is that on a state level, it does bring even more resources to Camden than would otherwise be. And I worked in Trenton. I've been to Trenton. I've been to Jersey. I've been in meetings in Union, Newark, Jersey City, through working at the network, through NLC, where I hear how jealous people are about the amount of money that Camden gets. The political pressure on the state level is for Camden to get way less money. So when people say, oh yeah, this is going to keep happening, you know what? It might happen again. This might happen again in a few years. That's true. It depends on what the status of the economy is in the situation. Right. Cheryl, thank you for saying that. The charter Renaissance schools do a really good job of raising money through grants and foundations. Now, the district gets foundation money in it too. The district has a whole foundation that just raises money for the foundation. For the district. But the Renaissance and charter schools are like, so the trips, for example, may not be coming out of the general operating budget, but could be coming from grant money instead. I think somebody told me that the district hired a grant writer within the last few months, if I recall. And I know the district has gotten a few grants in the last few months. So, maybe that's the key. Deborah Person-Paul, former councilwoman from the 3rd Ward, she was a grant writer for the district, and she was a very good grant writer for the district. I do not agree with her politically, but professionally, she knew exactly what she was doing and was able to get the district some grants. So, look, I laid this out. I want you guys to go home and think about the complicated situation that we're in this city. I don't know why my phone. I don't know what I'm saying, but like. I activated Bixby on my phone, and now the thing keeps talking to me. A few things. First, most parents in the city, 2 out of 3 parents in the city, have already decided that they'd rather their children not go to a district school. 2 out of 3 parents. There is no election strategy. There is no election strategy for there being a majority of board members elected that are in support of keeping all the schools open. So there's not a political strategy that leads to that, because there are more parents, there are more voters that children go to Renaissance and charter schools than go to district schools. Financially, so that's politically. Financially, where is this money going to come from? We're talking about millions and millions and millions of dollars. What's the next one I want to say? Not professionally. In the hierarchy, the superintendent's being told to do this by the state, one way or another. You think a state-appointed superintendent is going through a long-term planning process without the approval, if not mandate, from the Commissioner of Education? See, one of the reasons for the recent temper tantrum that we've seen is because the former commissioner made a promise that he didn't keep and then left. And now a couple of folks in Camden feel played by the former commissioner. And instead of going at him and saying, hey, you made a promise, come fulfill your promise, that energy is being projected and sent to the superintendent. We should be better than this as a community. As men, it is our duty to use our strength to protect the women around us. It is our animalistic, instinctive nature. That's why I think it's weird when men make it a point to publicly, repeatedly attack a woman. I don't understand how that could happen, actually, and it'd be okay in our community. It shows you really what we value. And then to call the person names like a liar when there's no evidence that a lie's been told. Katrina never said all schools will stay open every single year. Katrina never said we're going to figure this out and we're going to find the money somewhere no matter what. In fact, when schools didn't close last year, she said this is nothing short than a miracle. I want us as a community to remember that no one outside of Camden really cares. People in Pennsauken, people in Cherry Hill, in Willingboro, Trenton, they got their own issues. They don't care. Philadelphia surely got their own issues across the river. They don't care. You think President Joe Biden is going to come and save Camden? He's not. You think Governor Murphy wants to keep all the district schools open? He doesn't. And that's the progressive guy. He's the guy that's against the machine, right? He's not. Look who he endorses as a leader of the state's Democratic Party. Let us do something completely different as a community. And that is to prioritize learning, to make books, reading, art, trips as learning opportunities, to encourage mom and dad of babies to read to their children, to use every opportunity in the world as a learning opportunity, to value learning, to value education, to make sure that we have times that we're putting our cell phones down and have no tech time in our homes so our children aren't all on their tablets or playing their games all the time. Let's prioritize learning and education. Let's figure out how to support teachers more so they don't have the pressure of being around children all day on Zoom and then going and have to raise their own children in the house all day, because it's very taxing and very stressful. These are the discussions that I want to have. How do we get our children to love learning and deliver that education to them in a way that they receive and absorb and excel with? Well, we got to feed them. We got to hug them, make sure they feel loved. We have to pray for them and make sure they have spiritual guidance. We have to be good examples and make sure that the street hustlers aren't the most successful people that they see in their community. We have to make sure hold our politicians accountable to being good leaders to our children. We have to make sure that the most successful people from our community are giving back to our community. We have to hold the corporations who are here receiving benefits from being in Camden. We have to make sure they actually are contributing to education in Camden. These are the things, not attacking the superintendent, not criticizing a plan that's inevitable and unavoidable. Let's focus on what we actually have power and control over. And let's stop pretending that Renaissance or charter schools are somehow an enemy school type when that doesn't really make any sense and the facts just don't support it. Are there imperfections? Yes, and we should advocate to change those. Not mislead teachers and educators and parents into thinking that they're one protest away from a victory of their school staying open. It's not going to happen. And if it's not yours, it will be another. You can disagree with me. You can think I'm wrong, but please understand that I'm doing this out of love for my community. I don't benefit from this. No one's paying me to do this. I have no idea what Norcross or Moran or Council, I have no idea, nor do I care really what these people think about this. I love my community and I want to see all of us excel. Please drink water, eat green leafy vegetables, put lemons in your drinks, avoid fats and sugars, pray and meditate, take a long walk and get some exercise. I will pray for you and your happiness and your joy. And I ask that you do the same for me. Have a good night.